There have been many questions about who will be the frontrunner for the Democratic Party for the 2024 election. Kamala Harris being the one who was thrust onto the scene, being given gas to her fire so she can run headlong into the political landscape and hopefully be the one to capsize Donald Trump and win the 2024 election. Here's the deal, though. I'm not entirely sold that Kamala Harris is 100% going to be the representative. All it takes is a fumble of the bag, much like we have seen previously with that of Joe Biden, and she will be turned on by the establishment en masse, as we have already seen them do to numerous different candidates. It would not surprise me if she has such a disastrous appeal to many people after they end up looking more into her and seeing her speak openly and consistently, thus driving people away from her because she is such an insufferable human being herself. So with this, we understand that there's a very strong chance that Kamala Harris very well may not be the delegate come time for the 2024 election, but I also would not be surprised if their astroturfing of her campaign was enough to jettison her into the finish line to make sure that she could actually get there. Maybe she doesn't defeat Donald Trump, but one thing that I do see is that in the end, something they could capitalize on would be the opportunity of what their opposition in Donald Trump getting into power could provide them down the line for something akin to the 2028 election. This is something that no one pays attention to in presidential politics. Many of the times, when you see your opposition get into power is when your base gets most readily activated, and in doing so gives you the capacity to mobilize far easier and do so with much more efficiency. And because of this, if Donald Trump is to win in 2024, we very well may see this happen throughout that of the Democratic Party, uniting against Donald Trump even harder once more to make sure we can stop the tyrannical orange man. So now let's go ahead, jump in and see what we've got with the astroturfing of Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. And I knew immediately that she was going to be someone who was being focused on specifically by the Democratic Party when I saw this very clearly staged video of Barack and Michelle Obama calling Kamala Harris as she walks out of a venue. Let's go ahead and play that now.
Kamala!
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi, you're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Barack, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. It means so much. And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?
I appreciate that clip solely for the fact that it really shows that all of this is staged. The phone conversation, the camera just happening to be recording, able to catch all of the audio between Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and Kamala Harris perfectly. Absolutely and utterly ridiculous. But anyways, what is even more ridiculous would actually be how quick the Obamas had turned once they saw the viability of someone like Kamala Harris. And that is an interesting topic because they were refusing to endorse her. In fact, they were refusing to endorse anyone. And why is that? Well, as Barack Obama once said, he didn't want to, and I quote, put his thumb on the scales, as he had stated in the 2020 election, which is why he apparently didn't endorse Bernie Sanders. But of course, we know that's not actually the case. Bernie Sanders was not acceptable by the establishment. And why is that? Because Bernie Sanders was talking about how there shouldn't be millionaires and billionaires. Of course, then he sold a book making millions of dollars and in the process then changing his rhetoric to only attacking the billionaires. Well, I wonder why that could be. So it's quite fascinating to see the dynamic of how it is politics is tackled by people within the upper echelon of the leadership bracket like Barack Obama. But what you come to realize is these people are nothing more than liars, because in the end they will endorse whoever is necessary to make sure that they can hold on to the reins of power. Here we see why Obama hasn't endorsed Harris. This is from the New York Times on July 22nd. The former president has positioned himself as an impartial elder statesman above intra-party machinations and was neutral during the 2020 Democratic primaries. Ah yes, Barack Obama, the wise elder statesman, completely removed from the nature of intra-party politics. Are you serious right now? Barack Obama is known, at a minimum, for being someone involved with the standards of intra-party politics, the minutia within the walls of the Democratic Party. The fact that someone would come forward and claim this and also make the assertion that Barack Obama had no influence on what was going on with the 2020 presidential nominee, that he wasn't willing to back anyone openly. Are you serious? This is such a blue-pilled perspective on politics that you are so removed from the nature of how power actually operates that the fact is that you are commentating on it for a professional news outlet is one of the most damning indictments imaginable to the corporate press. Let's go ahead now and jump in. Many of the marquee names in Democratic politics began quickly lining up behind Vice President Kamala Harris on Sunday, but one towering presence in the party held back. Barack Obama. The former president has not yet endorsed Ms. Harris. In fact, he did not mention her once in his affectionate, if tauntingly written, tribute to President Biden. Joe Biden has been one of America's most consequential presidents, as well as a dear friend and a partner to me, wrote Mr. Obama, who chose Mr. Biden as his running mate in 2008 because he said at the time that he wanted an older, more experienced running mate with gray in his hair and limited future presidential ambitions. We will be navigating uncharted waters in the days ahead, Mr. Obama wrote in the Post, but I have extraordinary confidence that the leaders of our party will be able to create a process from which an outstanding nominee emerges. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and focus up on a couple of pieces here that I want to make sure we highlight, which I guess technically the last one was also highlighted. You get my point anyways, moving on. Here we see many of the marquee names in Democratic politics began quickly lining up behind Vice President Kamala Harris on Sunday, but one held back. And then they talk about how that person being Barack Obama. So what's so interesting about this, like I've already stated, is how this echoes the sentiments of what we saw previously in the 2020 election cycle. Here we see it says Joe Biden has been one of America's most consequential presidents, says Barack Obama, which that's a slight jab because, oh yes, he has most certainly been one of our most consequential presidents when you look at the factors of inflation that we're dealing with, also with the mass influx of illegal immigrants into the country, the skyrocketing crime rate, the fentanyl overdoses escalating, the veteran suicide epidemic through the fucking roof. Granted, some of these things not specifically falling on Joe Biden, Donald Trump also being a major money, big government guy, because what we saw is during the COVID era, he spent trillions of dollars to send out stimulus checks, and in the process is the person who kickstarted this rampant bout of inflation that we are now seeing, that Joe Biden has only continued. Alrighty, the thing that I find so crucial to go ahead and pay attention to specifically though, because here it says, I have extraordinary confidence that the leaders of our party will be able to create a process from which an outstanding nominee emerges. And who is it that would be the intellectual thought leader of the Democratic Party? Well, it's people like Barack Obama himself, as well as someone akin to Nancy Pelosi and the like. This is so clearly and obviously political backdoor theater, and they're doing nothing more than preparing the show that they put on for you. And that clip of Kamala Harris speaking with Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, which was very clearly scripted and structured beforehand, was so obviously astroturfed as propaganda that anyone who doesn't see that probably couldn't tell you that the sun was out when it was noon. Alrighty now, jumping into the New York Post, here we see top Dems threatened to forcibly remove Biden from office unless he dropped out, set him up to fail at the Trump debate, sources say. Okay, so I would not be surprised at all if Biden was set up to fail, because solely for the fact that when you saw him walk out onto that stage to deliver his first address to the nation in a debate, well, it wasn't good, and he was walking out and he looked like an old man on rails, like he had rickets. And not only that, once you saw Joe Biden walk out, you realized you were dealing with a very different version of the man that you saw at the State of the Union. It very well could be the fact of his sundowning, or the CIA did not give him his super stimulants that they have been using to whip him up into a frenzy to make sure he is active and mobile. Or the CIA did give him those super stimulants, and of course, much like many drugs, what we see is the fact of diminishing returns of value when it comes to the impact it has upon you. Thus, Joe Biden did not get as, let's say, captivated and ensnared by those chemicals that were running through his mind rampantly like a fucking bull in a china shop. And then in that process, we see that, well, he fell apart in real time, as we saw during the presidential debate with Donald Trump on CNN with Dana Bash and I believe it was Jake Tapper hosting it, which I will admit, while I am not a fan of CNN nor Jake Tapper nor Dana Bash, I was quite surprised that they did not go for Donald Trump's neck in the fashion that I thought they would. They were actually far more fair than I ever would have anticipated. But at the same time, I think the reason that is because they understand the position they're in as being seen as a propaganda outlet. And if they had done so in, let's say, operating more so tilted against Donald Trump and in favor of Joe Biden, it very clearly would have showed the hand that they're playing to even the normies as we see the tumultuous political time that we walk through, because now we see even those defending Joe Biden in his current state, well, they were being laughed out of the room and still consistently are, even by that of those who are politically removed from the topic of politics as a whole, because what they see is a doddering old man atop the world stage. And when they see this, they're like, oh, well, obviously, this is nonsense. And you know what else is nonsense? The fact of what you are told when it comes to how it is someone like Joe Biden is removed from power. Well, he just decided to step down of his own volition, you see. Actually, it appears, according to someone like Seymour Hersh, one of the greatest journalists of all time, that's actually not the case. Here we see from the Post-Millennial. Seymour Hersh says Obama and Kamala threatened to invoke the 25th Amendment on Biden before he dropped out. Obama called Biden after breakfast and said, here's the deal. We have Kamala's approval to invoke the 25th Amendment. If you would like to go ahead and read that entire Substack article from Seymour Hersh, I will have it linked down in the description below so you can go check it out. Well worth your time if you are not subscribed to anyone's Substack. If there was ever a person I could recommend you do so to make your first foray into that landscape, it would absolutely be the great Seymour Hersh. Now let's go ahead and jump in and see what this article from the Post-Millennial has for us. A new Substack out from Seymour Hersh indicates that former President Barack Obama and VP Kamala Harris, now presumptive Democrat nominee for president, threatened sitting President Joe Biden with the potential invocation of the 25th Amendment if he didn't drop out of the presidential race and cede that spot to the Veep. This would mean that not only did they force Biden out of the race, but that the Democrats know full well that Biden isn't fit to serve out the rest of his term, but are comfortable letting him continue as a figurehead if it serves their efforts to retain power for the party. Biden engaged in a debate with former president and GOP nominee for president Donald Trump on June 27th. It was so bad that almost instantly Democrat leaders and pundits were looking for a way to get Biden off the ticket. They could see that there was a very little chance that Biden in his diminished state could beat Trump at the ballot box. The party elite were aghast and worked hard in both public and private to oust Biden. While much of that played out in a leaked rumor speculation, it turns out, per Hersh, that what was going on behind the scenes was a kind of coup, completed with threats from the Obama-Kamala team. All right, let's go ahead and jump in now. I've highlighted a couple of things I want to pay attention to, and then we'll move on. Here we see President Barack Obama and VP Kamala Harris threaten sitting President Joe Biden with the potential invocation of the 25th Amendment if he didn't drop out of the presidential race. And that should show you the entirety of how the political game works. It's not about actually making sure we can do what's best for the voters or making sure that we can stand for the standards of democracy. Of course, democracy not actually meaning what you think it means, because words don't mean what you think they mean when you're dealing with people who see words as nothing more than a power game. And that is the big thing to pay attention to here, that what you're dealing with is the fundamentals of the differential of power and how people exert that upon you. And that is exactly why you saw that they were willing to keep Joe Biden as the figurehead up until the point that they could no longer do so. Also, they could make sure that they had their hands on the reins of power. Alrighty, here we see, not only did they force Biden out of the race, but that the Democrats now know full well that Biden isn't fit to serve out the rest of his term, but are comfortable letting him continue as a figurehead if it serves their efforts to retain power for the party. Like I just said, but the big thing to pay attention to here would be what? They claim not only did they force Biden out of the race, but Democrats now know that Biden is not fit to serve. They've known that for ages, whether it be that of the media pundits like those on CNN, ABC, CBS, and every single other corporate press outlet under the sun, or those within the upper echelon of the political elite in Washington, D.C. that are dealing with Joe Biden on a regular basis. This was so obvious. It was already known. But of course, sweeping all of this under the rug, as they so consistently do, now once it is completely unavoidable and people are tripping over the garbage that you have swept under the rug for so long, now you actually have to address it. And in doing so, you'll never actually admit culpability for the fact of your lies in perpetrating this narrative upon the world. No. You'll just sit there and claim, well, wow, can you believe it? Oh my goodness, look at Joe Biden. He's just not the man we thought he was. Except what you thought he was a felonious lie that you even didn't believe, as you sold it to the world because you are nothing more than what? Liars for the powerful. Alrighty, jumping on now, I should say. My fucking goodness. Here we see very little chance that Biden in his diminished state could beat Donald Trump. And they actually have a typo here. It says C-O-U-D-L instead of C-O-U-L-D. Come on, post-millennial, what the fuck are you doing? Anyways, the fact is that no, Biden would not have been able to defeat Donald Trump in his diminished state, and I don't even know if Kamala Harris can as well. Of course, that comes down to the fact of if the ballot machines are running, let's say, without any interference per se. Would be quite fascinating to see another moment at 3 in the morning where just everything shuts down and we see these election machines just randomly having all of these ballot spikes once again. Of course, as we know, YouTube knows that the 2020 election was the most secure and safe election ever had throughout all of American politics, and if you question that, well, you're nothing more than a nonsensical conspiracy theorist that no one should take seriously, and you're a threat to our democracy. Of course, like I said, democracy not actually being the value of your vote as instituted within the system so people can represent you. No, what we see as a threat to democracy is actually a threat to our ability to control the long arc of history and manipulate the levers of power. Here we see behind the scenes, it was kind of a coup, complete with threats from the Obama-Kamala team. Oh, so what you're saying is it was in order to orchestrate a way to keep your hands atop the lever of power. So your figurehead continues to sit atop the mountain and screech your talking points into the ether. Isn't that just remarkable? Let's go ahead and see what else this article has for us. By Saturday, July 20th, Hirsch writes, former President Barack Obama was deeply involved, and there was talk that he would place a call to Biden. It was not clear whether Biden had been examined or just what happened to him in Las Vegas. The big three, the official said, referring to the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, continued to be directly involved. On Sunday morning, the official told me with the approval of Pelosi and Schumer, Obama called Biden after breakfast and said, here's the deal. We have Kamala's approval to invoke the 25th Amendment. The amendment provides that when the president is determined by the vice president and others to be unfit to carry out the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall assume those duties. It was clear at this point, the official said per Hirsch, that she would get the nod, that this is the support to run for the presidency in the November election. But Obama also made it clear, the official said, that he was not going to immediately endorse her, but the group had decided that her work as a prosecutor would help her deal with Trump in a debate. Jumping back in for another quick analysis before we continue on, here we see by Saturday, former President Barack Obama was deeply involved, and there have been many speculations that Barack Obama has been in fact deeply involved with this White House. Many people, including Tucker Carlson, speculating that we've effectively seen the third term of Barack Obama. There was actually a quote of Barack Obama saying quite some time ago that if he could ever do it again, he would want to run for president, but just do so from a basement in his sweatpants with someone wearing an earpiece as a figurehead talking for him. Anyways, imagine that being the case, that Barack Obama being one of the most beautiful and well-structured orators of our time, truly an incredibly well-spoken person, and he had the broken, fumbling gas bag that was Joe Biden, this dementia-riddled, Alzheimer's-tainted old man who has no capacity to convey a point. That is truly some cosmic level of fuckery. Anyways, here we see the big three, the official said, referring to former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer, which is Chuck Schumer, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, continued to be directly involved. Oh, so what you're saying is this was a coup instituted by the upper echelon of the Democratic elite, once again completely defying the standards of democracy, that thing that they claim to care so much about. Here we see with the approval of Pelosi and Schumer, the approval of the upper echelon of the political bracket, Obama called Biden after breakfast saying, here's the deal. We have Kamala's approval to invoke the 25th Amendment. Isn't that amazing? The fact is that what you see here, much like overthrowing and instituting new powerful regimes in other countries as the United States has done numerous times, while this looks quite similar to exactly that. Here we see Obama also made it clear, the official said, that he was not going to immediately endorse her. And why would that be by chance? Well, what it would do is give away the entirety of the game that what we did in fact see was a coup, which is exactly why he bit his tongue at that time being. It's also very possible Barack Obama is biding his time, not fully endorsing someone as we have now seen him do, which I was wondering if this was going to be the case solely for the reasoning that he would have had the opportunity to abandon Kamala Harris as well as the rest of the DNC when they had this open convention that was coming forward, but that doesn't appear to be the case. What appears to be the case is that they're going to use Kamala Harris as their figurehead, and the best reasoning that they have to do so is right here. The group decided that her work as a prosecutor would help her deal with Trump in debate. And it's not specifically about debate. It's about the talking point that I talked about quite some time ago that they're always going to run with, which is the most simple and obvious one. It's just Occam's razor applied to the political landscape that, well, Kamala Harris is a prosecutor and Donald Trump is a felon. And you know what she did as a prosecutor? She convicted felons. It's literally going to be that kind of just utterly ridiculous, totally nonsensical, brain-dead realpolitik, which is sadly the nature of the world we live in, but it is what it is. Let's go ahead and jump on with the rest of this article, talking about the coup that has been instituted within the upper echelon of the Democratic Party. On July 26th, the Obamas, both Barack and Michelle, did endorse Harris. The phone call during which they offered her their backing was filmed. The call on speaker while Harris held the phone to the ear. A mic could be seen pinned to her blazer. The official, who has decades of experience in fundraising, told me that Obama emerged as the strongman throughout the negotiations. He had an agenda and he wanted to seek it through to the end, and he wanted to have control over who would be elected. It had been rumored that Pelosi and Schumer wanted Biden out. It had been rumored that Obama had given Hollywood A-lister George Clooney the go-ahead to write his op-ed in the New York Times calling for Biden to step aside. It was rumored, too, that if Biden didn't step down, his legacy would be at stake. Once Biden's letter withdrawing from the race was posted to X with the endorsement of Harris shortly afterwards, party leadership all began oohing and awing over Biden's selfless decision to step aside, praising his decision to nominate Harris. Jeffries and Schumer began claiming that Harris' candidacy was coming from the grassroots and not the top down. Do I really need to say anything else, or has this article painted the mural for you like that of a 4K image on your wall? It is truly stunning that we see something like this unfolding in the current day, and specifically doing so in the open for so many people to see it unfold. I'm not surprised that this is going on behind the scenes, but what I am surprised is the nature of how much it's fallen apart at the seams, that it's now being exposed to the public as the curtain flares out and people can see there is most certainly a man behind that curtain. It's unbelievable that we see that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer claiming, well, this is coming from the grassroots, the bottom up, and not the top down. Would you even have to say that it was coming from the grassroots if it wasn't coming from the top down? Because the thing is about an organic movement, it's actually quite obvious that it's happening as such, and all you have to do is look to Bernie Sanders to see exactly that. But of course, y'all didn't want him. You excommunicated from the field of relevance by fucking him and his supporters into the dirt twice, and what we see is he bent the knee to the establishment, as we are seeing Joe Biden do here. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great, and most importantly, tell someone you love them. Peace out.